It's a very interesting ice today. As Hashem, we're going to get into a little bit of the concept of Atzilus, that we keep on saying that Atzilus, that the kindness is given in Atzilus, but it doesn't have a relation to this world. We're going to start getting into that a little bit as Hashem. So just to recap what we were talking about before, we said that the chesed that comes in Atik, Rosh Hashanah, and Yom Kippur, that there's no form that it takes in this world, and it's also not divided into quality and quantity in Bani Chayim Zene. And we said this is why a person is judged every day, to know how these things should come down for him every single day. So, Amram das Rabbanon b'inyan adinu mishpatim mizenes shel adam k'tuvim l'Rosh Hashanah v'chol tzrachav shel adam uvnei veisav b'Bani Chayim Zenehem v'chol mizenes. So the opinion of the Chachamim is that the judgment that happens, that for the sustenance of a person is set for him on Rosh Hashanah, and everything that a person needs and the people of his house and everything that the people of his household need in Bani Chayim Zeneh, in children, vitality, and sustenance, they're all included in sustenance. And they hold that a person's verdict is sealed on Yom Kippur. The Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur nigmar pratei inyanei adam al kol hashana l'chayim eichulu. And on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, all of the details of a person's life are for the upcoming year are sealed, whether it's for life or to etc. And also to all of the other things that may happen to him. So therefore, it is impossible to say that the chesed of Atzilus has no form which relates to this world. Hold on, I think just lost. If that's the case, what's the concept that he's written and signed? How could it be that everything that will happen to him has been decided by Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur? It's forced to say that in the chesed that's set for him, that there is a form that is given to what will come down into this physical world. With the chayra, and the chayra, this isn't understood. This physical world, Asiya, as we've been saying this whole time, has no scale of comparison to Atzilos. And if that is the case, how is it possible that in the chesed that will come down into Malchus of Atzilos, that there will be a form and an image of things that happen in this world. Now, something interesting to note is that someone that's not familiar with how things work, they think that Kabbalah is a thing to just make up answers as we go along for convenience's sake, which I'm sure some people believe that. They would probably say, well, it's very simple. The Chachamim believe that that's not the case about how Atzilus works. They would say that there is a Tayar, and Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Nassan hold that there is no Tayar. That's not the case. What happens is something that happens, and I'm sure someone like the Rebbe Rashab knows exactly how things come down in Atzilus. He sees the same thing. The question is not a question of what happens, because what happens is what happens. The question is a question of how are we interpreting what it is that happens. It's like there was a classic thing where there was like a dress and it was blue and black or yellow or white and gold. It was a thing that happened a few years ago, and everyone was looking at the exact same dress, but some people saw that it was blue and black and some people saw that it was white and gold. And it's not that one person was particularly wrong. I mean, you could say that the actual dress was blue and black, and like in real life. But as far as the picture goes, there's two different perspectives that you can look at the picture with. And based on there was also like a Laurel and Yanni thing, like a audio clip. These things every now and then there's like a thing of different perceptions that go around. It's the same thing. The same thing happens in Atzilus. The question is, how are we looking at it? How are we appreciating what it is that happens in Atzilus? So this is the question. This could be understood based on what it says in Terer that more than there's no scale between Asiya and Atzilus. There's no scale between Atzilus and Ein Seif Atzmos Amos. So, like there are different levels of infinity, if you will. Even though we explained before that Atzilus is separate, is distinct from the worlds of Bria and Yisira and Asiya, nevertheless, Atzilus is still a world. We still say the world of Atzilus. There's 4 worlds, we include them all together. And there are 10 spheres in levels of Eris and Kalim. Even though in Atzilus everything is literally godliness. there's no entity which is distinct from Hashem. Mikol Makim, nevertheless, Nikra Alikus, it's called godliness. It's not called Hashem. It's not called. We don't say Atzilus is Hashem. We say Atzilus is a godly world. It's a world in which godliness permeates everything. Okay, but it's still a world. If it would be Hashem, it would be called Elikah, Shemar Elatzmus, which refers to Hashem himself. Aval Elikus, but Elikus perish getlich. It means godly. Dainu, Shehu is Pashas Ar Levad. That it's only a dispersion of the ray of Hashem. It's like saying that Hashem, there's different ways you could explain it, but there's you could say that his presence is felt there, that his presence permeates everything, things like that, but it's not Hashem himself. And because of this, you're able to have 10 spheres over there. And more specifically, you have a Kelim of Atzilus. That Kelim of Atzilus is able to have, not just that you have the general concept of spheres, that you have the which has within itself maybe Gonos, the concept of spheres. No, you have Kelim that you actually have a concept of Chochmah in Atzilus. You actually have a concept of Chesed in Atzilus. It's divided in a practical way. And therefore, Hine me Esther spheres Atzilus from the 10 spheres of Atzilus, and Shachim Esther spheres the Bria Tirasiya, B'derech Shalshlus Ilav All Sheish Lam Erech B'Shaychas Zelazah. Therefore, from Atzilus, you're able to have the 10 spheres of Bria, and the 10 spheres of Yitzir, and the 10 spheres of Asiyah in a way that each sphere leads into the next one, because they have some kind of comparison and scale. So we say that there is no comparison in scale between Atzilus and between Atzilus and between the other worlds. That being said, there still is we say there's no scale of comparison. I guess if I could give a mathematical example, you would say there's no scale of comparison between 0 and 1, right? Because 0 is nothing, and 1 is something. The moment that you go anything above 0, you immediately have a number. Anything divided by 0, it's undefined. There's no way of comparing. You can't do 0 divided by 1 would just be 0. 1 divided by 0 would be there's no comparison. There's no way of saying that there's something in 1 that works legabe 0. I hope this isn't getting too mathematical.
No.
However, 0 isn't what you would say a null set. I don't know how far they go in math in universities over here, but 0 isn't a null set. A null set is not that there's a number, and there's a number, and the number happens to be that there's nothing in the number, and therefore the number can't interact well with other numbers because there's no way of comparing them. There's no scale comparison. You can't have a null set divided. There's no elements in a null set. There's nothing. Taka, a null set is still a set. That's we're not going that far. This isn't talking about esoteric gnosis or anything like that. This is just stam. So you have no scale of comparison between Asiya and Atzilus. But Seif Atzilus is still a world. Seif and Atzilus, you still have all of the things. You can apply any function to 0. Taka, you can't do 1 divided by 0 because that will give you something that isn't defined. But Seif, you can put 0 into any equation with any number, and it'll still be an equation. It'll still be something that makes sense in a sense. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
0 can also nullify, though.
What?
I don't know if it goes beyond the scope of the analogy you're using, but 0 can also nullify.
0.
10 times 0 equals 0 nullifies.
Yeah, I don't know. Don't read too deep into the analogy, but yeah, really, there's 0 within everything. I don't want to take the analogy too far. It was a stepping stone, as Wittgenstein would say. Once you've climbed up the ladder, now you can kick it out from underneath you. Anyhow, so we finished the paragraph.
Yeah.
The top. Okay. The shalshus was avos chachma dasiya, me chachma datzilus. While derech mashal mash amra v'sinu zachernim levracha, ein lecha esim milamata she'ein lo yamazal milamayla hamakabei ve'emer gadel. So the concept of chachma v'asiya coming from chachma v'atzilus is, by way of comparison, what the Chachamim say, that there's no blade of grass below that does not have an angel which hits it from above and says grow. Every blade of grass has a specific angel, and that angel's job is it needs to hit the blade of grass and it needs to say, hey, you're being lazy, grow. And higher and higher and higher than that, the chol inyanim sheyeshnam be'esav v'friya gshamim hareyeshnam b'mazal ruchni. Everything that you have in physical blades of grass and physical fruit, you also have in spiritual realms. And in every level it goes up and up. A physical apple, it has physical sweetness. Would you say that there's sweetness within the ground? Apples, we know, grow from the ground. When you eat an apple, you say bari pri eitz. Technically, if you make a bari pri adama, the apple grows from the tree grows from the ground. And we know that the apple gets all of its vitality from the ground, all of its nutrients it gets also from sunlight. But there's no ingredient that goes into an apple that you would say that the ingredient that goes into the apple is the sweetness. It's not like when you're planting a tree, you need to take some sugar and put it in, because otherwise how are your apples going to be sweet? You don't want to have bitter apples. So therefore you put in sugar. No, that's not how it works. The ground doesn't have any sweetness. We know that the ground is the source of the apple, but the ground doesn't have any sweetness.
The ground does influence the taste, though, like with grapes, for example.
It definitely influences there's minerals and stuff, but the sweetness, there's no sugar in the ground. Or there's no sweet chemical error. I mean, I know scientifically the way that it works is that it takes in carbon dioxide, and it also it has energy from the sun and takes in water. And sugar is a hydrocarbon, and it's able to take the energy from the sun, and it's able to make bonds between the carbons and the hydrogens, and it lets go of the oxygens, and therefore it's able to make hydrocarbons, and it's able to store the energy. I know how that works, but I know
very succinct.
That's how it is.
It's very good.
But I know that there's no sweetness in the ground. The ground is dirt, mamish, afar min adama. The apple is sweet, but the apple source is taka from the ground, and it gets its chayes from the sun, and it gets its materials from the ground and from the air around it, and none of those things are sweet. It's able to make sweetness, you would say, almost out of thin air. It does, in a sense, make. I mean, you would say maybe thicker air, but I'd say that's how it makes the sweetness. Yeah. So you can't say that the apple has sweetness from the ground. Upshita, and certainly you can't say about the malach that stands over it. The malach is the spiritual source of the apple. The malach is not. It's not really a distinct entity. It's so intrinsically connected to the apple. That's its job. That's its life. That's what it does. So the malach is, in a sense, on like the level of Yetzirah, if you will. It's what causes the apple to have that striving that it grows. The malach isn't sweet either. It's not that the malach is the sugar and then the malach is able to go. No, that's not how it works either. There's no place in the source of the apple that has sweetness. And on the levels which are higher, there's no comparison also. Over MS and the truth. Really, sweetness and bitterness and physicality are drawn from kindness and severity. It's drawn from chesed and gvura. Sweetness is drawn from chesed, the meriras from gvura, and bitterness from gvura. Kindness and severity are spiritual concepts. So only through going down from level to level, you're able to have that kindness, which corresponds to sweetness in a certain sense in this physical world. When the kindness comes down in a certain way, it's able to become physical sweetness after it goes down from level to level to level. And the yesh ein arei love, even though it's not comparable, you can't say that the spiritual concept of kindness, that there's a physical analog or any kind of analog. I mean, you could say technically there is an analog. You could say that the sweetness is nice and kindness is nice. But other than that, you can't say that there's an analog between the notion of kindness and sweetness. We call makim humi mizgei zuchonase. It still has the same kind of mizgei. I don't know how you would say how they translate it. Mixture. It's comprised largely in the same way. I mean, you would say that you appreciate kindness, you appreciate sweetness. They have some kind of relation.
What word are they using here for sweet?
Miskei. You would say misikos.
Misikos, okay. Masok just means like something that's physically sweet.
What?
Isn't it masok? Is something that's sweet?
Yeah, I mean, you also you call someone like sweetie. I guess you would say like.
That would be also that word, so it can be used in other contexts.
I mean that's modern day Hebrew. I don't know that that's a biblical concept.
Okay.
You could also, you could say Mosek Midvash, like Torah is very sweet, but that's like more by way of comparison, like by way of parallel.
But wait, sorry. Once again, the word that they're using here.
Mesikos.
Mesikos. Okay.
So you see that there's many things which are well balanced. In general, you have something is well balanced. You say arevos. You say that makes it sweet, or mesikos, beruchnius. Like the pleasure that you have when you appreciate something intellectual, it's also a kind of sweetness. Also the pleasure of a good song, which is also lower. This is like a throwback all the way to the beginning. We discussed different kinds of pleasure. So it's on a lower level. Until after many different levels of going down, you can have physical sweetness. So there's different kinds of sweetness, ultimately, I guess, leaning into pleasure in a sense, although you also have that with bitterness. Well, that's not what we're discussing over here. But many different kinds of sweetness that you have until you can actually have just the notion of physical sweetness. Something tastes sweet. This is also the concept of Chachma. It also has level upon level. And the Chachma that's in the 10 spheres of Asiyah, it has some kind of scale of comparison to Chachma Matzilos. Through going down through many different levels, Nimshach Chachma Chachma of Atzilus is able to be drawn down into Chachma of Asiyah. Even though Atzilus is removed from Biyah, and if you're like really paying attention, I technically pulled a fast one on you because I said that there's some kind of comparison between Chachma of Atzilus and Chachma of Asiyah. How can we say? We said already that there's no comparison. So Atzilus is taka removed from Biyah. How is it able to come down in a way of cause and effect? The concept is the shalshlos zeis ain't a shalshlos for Atzilus go for ba'asas shebay. It's not that the shalshlos is in the world of Atzilus itself and in the 10 spheres that it has. Or in the world of Bria or the other worlds and say the shalshlos the Bria hu al yidei parsa. The shalshlos from Atzilus to Bria is through something that is called a parsa. It's through a parsa. Literally, it's a unit of measurement. But in general, we say a parsa when we say that there's, if like by way of comparison, a physical distance between two things. Sometimes you have one thing that flows directly into another thing, like moments in time flow directly into each other. It's not that you have a moment in time. I mean, at least by our perception, scientists would say that no, there's a limit called the Zensek. No, there's a Planck time. There's a Planck time is the shortest unit of time, and moments can't flow into each other more smoothly than that. Or if they can, I mean, technically they can, but I shouldn't have digressed into that because I don't want to get stuck on that. That's not why I'm here. There are technically shortest units of time, but moments of time actually do flow into each other. One moment flows into the next moment. It's a smooth transition. It's not choppy. It's not that like frame by frame that everything has its cause and effect, but it happens frame by frame like you would have, I don't know, in a video game. Especially in the older video games, you're able to appreciate more that it goes literally frame by frame. And you could say, yeah, there's cause and effect. The cause and effect happens frame by frame. That's an irregular. Then you also have a parsa. A parsa is saying not just that it flows smoothly, it's not to scale. It's just that there's like a very big leap, there's a very big difference. If I would want to give a way of example by a person, you would have different ideas can flow in a person, and one idea flows into the next one. But you could also have a person who decides to do an action. And an action is saying, I'm making like a parsa. It's going from being me, it's going from being something that I want to do, right? It's going into affecting the physical world. And that's a leap. That's there's not a comparison. It still happened. I still cause something in the physical world. But the notion of, I don't know, me, myself, is like metaphysically, the notion of me is very different from this physical world. It's very distinct and it's very removed. I guess you could say the entire notion of like the main question of metaphysics, how could you have human consciousness that interacts with the physical world? That itself would be the notion of a parsa. The notion of a parsa is that it is distinct and it's removed. And that's how Atzilus interacts with Biyah. It interacts by way of a parsa. It is a shalshlos, but it's still in a way of parsa. It's still distinct, it's still removed, it's very clearly different. Okay. So, the Inyan, a parsa, the concept of a parsa is, like, by way of example, intelligence. A parable in intelligence, in intellect. A parable is something which is distinct from the intellect. And therefore, it hides over what it is completely. Until you have a person that is able to say a parable, is able to make an example, and the person that's hearing doesn't even know that it's a parable or that it's an example. The idea was taken so far out of context that it's able to be that you're not able to appreciate the idea in the parable. So when you reveal the intellect that's in the parable, certainly it's not the same. It's not the same intellect that it was before it was included in the parable. But nevertheless, it's not a different seichel. It's the same idea. It was included in the parable. You revealed it in the parable. Taka, it's different. It's a different. The seichel. I mean, trying to think of what would be like a good. I don't know. The boy who cried wolf. The notion of don't make a scene for nothing, because otherwise people are going to lose their trust in you, is an intellectual concept. The notion of a story where there was a boy and he was a shepherd is very distinct and removed from that. And Taka, I could even tell you that the notion of the boy that was a shepherd really has what to do with the thing, and I can explain it and it makes sense, but it's still removed. It's still it's still foreign matter. It's the same idea, but it's in a different form. It's a different story. It's different than you have the intellectual notion of why it's a bad idea to cause people to lose trust in you. And then you also have just like a physical story in a sense, not physical per se. You can still say it over, but it's a story. It's a different kind of thing. This is also the concept of the parsa, that it hides over chachma vatzilos. When it becomes chachma bria through the parsa, it's like the seichel that's being revealed in the mashal. So it's like a light of something that's being birthed. It goes through a different stage. It passes through a portal. It's a light which came from new in the world of Bria. It's not at all like the chachma as it is in Atzilos. But nevertheless, it's still not something completely separate. Even though Taka, there's not really such a good comparison between the chachma of Atzilos and the chachma of Bria. It's still the same chachma. Taka, it's in a completely different way. It's now the notion of creation. It's now the notion of existence. The notion that something exists. This is practically what it means. That you have Atzilos, Hashem has the notion of Chachma. The notion of Chachma is completely wrapped up in godliness in Atzilos. And then you have the notion of Chachma as it exists in the notion of creation, that it's created. It now has the notion of real entities to play with. It's by way of example, it's like a mashal for Hashem. It's a mashal for the way that Hashem appreciates Chachma. It's still the same Chachma, but now it's a notion of existence. Now it's a different kind of Chachma in a sense. But it's not made out of something different. It's the chachma of Atzilus, it's just coming in a different way. It's not similar to chachma of Atzilus l'gabe Eren Seif. There's no concept of chachma over there. Chachma is something, is a notion which Hashem made up. It's not comparable to the boundaries of chachma at all. You would say that you have the notion of chachma, the Gamas, we don't have remotely enough time to get into that, and that would take maybe a few lifetimes. So it doesn't have the boundaries of chachma at all. The chachma of Atzilus is literally, there's no comparison to it in Eren Seif. But in Atzilus there's still a concept of chachma. And this is so. So the chachma of Bria and the chachma of Asiya, it's still chachma. It might be a different chachma. You might have buried it under different levels of parable. You might have buried it under the concept of creation, and under the concept that it has a form, and under the concept that it has that it actually affects the world. You could bury it under all of that, but safe, it's still chachma. It's still the same idea. The idea of what happens in chachma of Atzilus is able to come down into chachma of Asiya. Chachma of Atzilus is removed from Chachma of Bria. So the creation is through the parsa. The Hainu Shababa Eifin Akim and Bekinas Chachma of Atzilus, it comes in a different way from Chachma of Atzilus. But nevertheless, it has a scale of comparison to Chachma of Atzilus. So Taka, it's removed. Taka, it's in a way that is no longer a completely godly way. It's now Chachma that it took form. But ultimately, it's still Chachma. Both of them are Chachma. And the fact that they're both Chachma means that there's a scale of comparison between them, especially the same ideas in Shalshal from Atzilus into Bria. I would ask any questions. No. I don't think we have time for questions. Kitzer. But even Atzilus has spheres Eretz Kelim. In the world of Atzilus, you have 10 spheres Eretz and Kelim. Chachma Datzil legabe Chachma Datzilus ke'erich Masikus Gashmi legabe Chesed Ruchni. V'mizeh Mishal Shalom Limenu. Chachma Datzil in relation to Chachma Datzilus is like this. Is like the notion of you have the relation of physical sweetness to spiritual kindness, and the physical sweetness is actually is caused by the spiritual kindness. And the shalshlus over Bria Yitzir and Asiyah from Atzilus is through the parsal, like we said, that the idea of an intelligent concept which comes from a parable. Atzilus movdul mebiyah v'yeshlen yachasilav, and Atzilus is removed from Bria, and there is a comparison between them. There's not a comparison. There's a connection between them.